Hey guys, thanks for joining us on Switch Hitting with Fitspits. In today's episode, we're going to talk to Eddie Hearn, president of Matchroom Boxing, about a variety of topics, including this weekend's Ben Eubank fight in England, also the arrival of Dana White as a power in boxing, and last but not least, what's next for one of Hearn's main guys, Dimitri Bivol. I guess the first question I had for you, the Ben Eubank fight coming up in a few weeks, and I've interviewed fighters, what feels like thousands of times. And when we get to this point in the process, we always ask them, okay, what's your, what's on your mind at this point? What's the process like the last 4 or 5 weeks? And they usually tell me they're trying to make weight. They're trying to stay sharp, blah, 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 blah. So for a promoter, for a guy on your side of things with that big an event coming up, what's going through your mind? You jittery? You excited? Were you nervous? Like, what's the vibe?
I mean, there's always kind of like the madness of the announcement. That's how it all starts, and then tickets going on sale, and then there's kind of like normally a little bit of a lull between that activity and 2 weeks before the fight. But with a fight like this, that's not really the case, because you've got two guys who are very active. I think that's the difference. Like here, a lot of guys just like to disappear into camp. They shut down their media. These guys are very active on social media. They like doing big media hits. The content is very good and strong, particularly like Conor Ben, like every day in camp, there's stuff coming out. So it's just, that's when you've got a massive event, and things change from a big fight to a huge fight, which is Ben Eubank. And, as a promoter, it's great to work with two guys that are also self-promoters, so you've got the vehicle of Matchroom and DAZN and Ring Magazine, but you've also got the vehicle of the fighters that are working when you're not working, or when the machine slows down a little bit to focus on other fights and other areas. So, yeah, it's quite a unique event. And really our job now, I mean, we've sold over 60,000 tickets. I think we have like 2,000 tickets left in different packages and bits and pieces. But, the job really for us is just keep the anticipation going, sell out the venue, and then get ready for what will be a very hectic and probably violent fight week.
Yeah, they're going to make it easy for you. That's for sure. The last couple of weeks. Yeah. Now, for us people stateside, who, we know who AJ and Fury are, and we know if that fight came together, that's magnitude 10. Where does this one compare? Like, would this be on the same level in the UK as an AJ Fury fight, or a 9 or an 8?
Fury AJ is like an exception. I mean, you're talking about, like, I mean, for me, it's the biggest fight in boxing. Sure. You'll get some American hardcore fight fans that say, no, it's not. It's if, but the reality is, like, trust me, that
they're wrong. By the way, just let you know.
I know, and from a British perspective, I think since AJ won a world title or got to that level, I haven't had a question, or I haven't had a day go past without a question from the media or a question from the general public crossing me in the street, at the petrol station, at a restaurant, where I haven't been asked, when is AJ fighting Fury? And like, it's never going to go away. And if they both bow out of the sport without doing it, unfortunately, there'll always be that void in their CVs and in the history of British boxing, to be honest with you. Like that fight's the biggest fight in British boxing right now, away from AJ Fury, is Ben Eubank, and that's now been made. And I'm actually a believer that AJ Fury will get made. I just think, like, Tyson Fury's retired, he's doing a few bits and pieces. Like, at what point do you just kind of sit there on a Sunday afternoon and go, fuck it, I'm going to do it, And I think he's that kind of person. Yeah. Like, I think if he wasn't so up and down, I might say, well, maybe he's just made this decision and said, I'm at peace. But I don't believe that,
He retires every couple of months. So
and for AJ, like, cards on the table, I don't think he's that motivated to fight anyone else other than Dubois or Fury. Like, why would you get up for, I don't know, a Caballero or a Parker or a Zank, with all due respect? Like, I don't know. So, yeah, it's frustrating that we can't just have a quick meeting and go, because that's the way the fight would happen. You know, it's a straight up deal, and I think it would take a minute to do the deal for the fight, but it needs the consent, of course, of both men and the willingness of both men. And I do think over time, hopefully, it will get there.
Now, you were, if I'm getting your age right, you were a kid when Nigel and Connor's, dads fought. First of all, do you recall that? And do you recall how big it was compared to how big this is?
Yeah, I mean, the narrative's fascinating because my dad was the promoter of Ben Eubank 1 and Ben Eubank 2. 1990, the first fight, I was 11 years old. The second fight, 1993, I believe, Old Trafford. I remember the night. I was there. It was a misty night. I think it was like October, November. It's quite strange to be doing an outdoor event that time of year.
Right.
It was like 53,000 people. And I was doing what I was doing at every show at that age. Scurrying about, nipping backstage, popping into changing rooms, just being a nuisance. And I remember the magnitude, like for us as a business and a family, Ben Eubank 1 was like the kind of crowning of Matchroom as a major, all of a sudden we had, although the WBO was a smaller organization then, we had the world middleweight champion. And we also did it on ITV, which is a linear platform with tens of millions of people watching. Well, over 10 million people watching, right? So all of a sudden, Eubank becomes a star overnight. You go to the rematch, and we eventually started promoting Nigel Benn as well. And they were two very different characters. Like my dad and Eubank were very close. Like he was best man at Eubank's wedding.
Oh.
Like they went on an incredible journey together. Probably but the more popular fighter with the public was Nigel Benn, because he was a savage. He would fight anyone. We saw him go over and destroy Iron Barkley in a round. Beat Doug DeWitt. Obviously, the Gerald McClellan, fight, which was a tragedy in a way, was still one of the greatest performances. I mean, incredible. So yeah, growing up, I was around both guys, and the two fights were huge. They were, like I said, I think the second one watched by like 18, 17 million people in the UK, and these guys were on national news together. And the similarities between their sons, not just in the ring, but the mannerisms and the whole build-up it's incredible.
Now, you talked about the build-up. Obviously there was an incident a couple of weeks ago. And I remember in the aftermath of that, I was thinking about a documentary that HBO did on when Lennox fought Mike Tyson. And they interviewed Shelley Finkel, who was working with Mike at the time. And he said that after the scrum they had at their first press conference, Mike came to him and said, "The fight's going to be bigger now, isn't it?" And Shelley said, "It is, but that's not the way I wanted it."
Yeah.
Now, is this fight bigger because of what happened 2 weeks ago?
For sure. I mean,
are you happy about it?
I historically, I haven't always agreed with Shelley, but I do agree with him, and I kind of feel the same as what you just said that he said at the time, which was, because my reaction, first of all, no one knew it was an egg, because we didn't anticipate that. I thought it was a glass or the bottle he was holding or whatever it was, and the reality is you don't strike someone at a press conference, right? Unfortunately, we now live in a world that is so desensitized that that's not even a big deal, and that's actually
nobody
quite
blinks
fun.
anymore.
And
right?
do you know what I mean? So it's difficult because we're trying. We do a lot of work at grassroots level within the community, and I'm a big believer of what boxing can instill in the younger generation. Discipline, manners, understanding rules, and that's just not, in my opinion, it's just not okay to do that.
Right.
But in the world we live in, everyone's like, it's no big deal, is it? I mean, it's only an egg. Like, yeah, but that shell, catches the eyelid or the cornea, the fight's off, the career could be over. I mean, that's the reality. But everyone's like, oh, shut up, stop it, don't be ridiculous. It's like, well, okay, so you kind of give up on that, and then, but at the same time, when you calm down, you look at the front page of the national newspaper, and it's there, and it's like, I don't know. There's always the mix of, I don't think I can ever come out and say, me being a promoter, me driving a narrative, me wanting exposure for a fight, I don't want to sort of come out and say, oh, this is absolutely appalling. We must, but I'd rather other ways to get that kind of publicity, but also sometimes something shocking like that is what gets it. And, I guess once you calm down and you realise no one was hurt, you're less bothered about it. But, obviously the British Boxing Board of Control were bothered about it and issued a £100,000 fine, which is a hefty fine, because when you actually think about it, he struck his opponent at the press conference. I mean, forget the egg. He whacked him around the face, which we can't really have. But this fight is very personal, and there's a lot of bad blood between the two.
Gotcha. Now, speaking of guys who push the envelope, let's put it that way. I'm guessing over the last couple of weeks you've been asked maybe 10,000 times to react to Dana White and the news of what he's doing and what his plans are and the ideal and all the rest of this. So I'm not going to ask you to elaborate the same way that everybody else is already asking you. But if you had one word to describe the impact, your reaction to it, whatever, however you want to take this, to the news of him saying what he said and doing what he says he's going to do, what is your reaction to it in a brief, in one word or in 5 words or whatever?
Yeah, I'll elaborate a bit more. I mean, I think a lot of people, there were a lot of ruffled feathers from the announcement and particularly the comments. I mean, you have to understand Turki Al-Sheikh. When he makes these announcements and when he's very excited, he'll often say to me, jokingly or even on camera, Matchroom, I finished. Stick to boxing and darts. It's the way that he is. And I think, but it ruffled a lot of feathers in the boxing world. Promoters, managers, particularly governing bodies, and it's a dangerous game because as I've learned in boxing over nearly 2 decades, boxing is out of control and you will never be able to control it. And you will never put everybody out the game. And it is full, inside and outside of the ring, of the most resilient people that you can ever come across. Right. And I learned this lesson myself, particularly when I came into America, because I was the loudmouth who had this massive budget from DAZN. I needed to make noise. No one knew what DAZN was. It was a new product. It was an app. People were laughing at me. Managers, promoters were saying, you want to go on an app? What is this? This is a joke, blah, blah, blah. And I was like fighting it all. I had a huge budget. Everybody else stepped up, right? They started paying fighters more. They started losing millions of dollars. But they didn't care because it was a fight, right? And they were up for the fight. What's going to be fascinating here is TKO, WWE, UFC is a business which is based on control. Controlling a sport, controlling the talent, getting the talent completely under control to do what you want them to do. That ain't working in boxing. And it's not working at a high level. Now, what it can work at, and obviously being in the sport, I'm hearing about fighters that are signing for the league. The level that they're recruiting at, you can control these people. Right. Because it's like a massive thing, a massive opportunity. Like, wow, I can be in a league. I can get, I don't know, 50,000, 100,000 for a fight. What? And I could be with Dana White. Well, the same kind of mentality of an MMA fighter whose dream is to get a UFC contract.
Right.
Right. Now, with managers and advisors and lawyers and the huge paydays that boxers are receiving, it really isn't going to work like that. So the only way, in my opinion, the league can work is by getting prospects and lesser known fighters who are willing to sign up to a commercial agreement that will ultimately control your career and fight whoever you're told to fight, and they don't care. And by the way, that format can work. I'm not saying, oh, it's a terrible idea. But you know, I see Oscar De La Hoya's stuff, and I see, and I just think you boys better be up for the fight, because I'll tell you something now, this is the worst business in the world, and you have to sleep every night with one eye open. When you go to sleep at night and you wake up in the morning, nothing is ever the same. Right? In your business that you're in at the moment, you've got no problems. You wake up, people do what you want to do. You go to bed, people do what you want to do. You've got complete control. You've got a blank canvas to do whatever you want. Now, they're going to try and replicate that blank canvas in boxing. And you can do it at a certain level.
On a certain level.
You can't do it, in my opinion, in the big fights with the big talent, unless you spend hundreds of millions. No, billions.
So when he suggests that that's what he's going to do, given the reality that you are aware of it, I'm quite certain he's probably aware of it on some level, is he just and it's not the right word, but I'll use it anyway. Is he delusional? Is he just making a statement that he knows he can't? He's overpromising what he knows he can't deliver.
If you
just
listen,
making noise,
if you listen to what he's saying, it's actually I don't think he is hype. He's saying we want to build boxing from the ground up, develop young talent, and make them stars. Right? What that means is guys that you've never heard of.
Right. Okay.
But we're going to give them massive publicity, exposure. We're going to give them the TKO vehicle or the Endeavor vehicle, and we're going to turn them into pay-per-view stars. That can work. It's not, but it's not. I don't think, and I might be wrong, I don't think this is all the big names are going to be in the league.
Sure. Like Canelo's not going there. AJ's not going there. Like he's not getting those.
But they would do for obscene money. But TKO is smart. Dana's smart. Nick Khan's smart. Shapiro's smart. They're not going to overpay fighters and run a business that can never make money. They want immediate return on day one. So they've got to sign a big TV deal. They've got to get a structure in place. This whole one belt thing. Like, I know fighters. Now, unless there is hundreds of millions and billions, and they want the belts.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? The history of the WBC, the heroes carrying those belts, that means something to them. And unless the money and the opportunities are out of control, they won't turn their back on that. And, I think that boxing is such a pain in the arse. And these are very successful people. And I just don't think they're going to need this or want this in their life.
So in the meantime, guys like yourself, guys like Bob Arum, guys like Oscar, the big promoters that people think of when they think of boxing, how do you react to it? Do you change anything the way you're doing, or do you just kind of wait for him to realize what he's up against here?
No, you keep making the best fights, or you push to make the best fights, the biggest shows. What this does is, and why I say this is good for boxing, like a lot of people are, is this good or bad for boxing? Of course it's good for boxing. What, TKO, Dana White, Turkey, investing in the sport, it raises the ecosystem of boxing. But what it does is it gives everybody else a kick up the backside, us included, right? We're trying our best every day, but it gives you another level of injection to say, right, we want to be the best. We want the best fights. We want the best shows. The key is always your broadcast deal. For us, we do 35 shows a year globally. Nothing changes. But, for us, we want to go to the next level. And I think it probably brings people together more as well. Maybe us, Oscar, Bob, Heyman, where we're going, right, we all share a passion to stay in the game and keep boxing thriving in its current format. I don't think boxing's broken at all. But you can always evolve and you can always make improvements. Boxing's red hot. Why do you think Dana White and TKO and Endeavor and a stock listed company want to get involved with boxing?
Sure.
Because it's red hot. It's hotter than MMA right now, for sure. So I think it's great for boxing. I really do. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Now, speaking of the health of the sport, talk to me about what you're excited about this year. I mean, obviously, Bivol just had a huge win a couple of weeks ago. You got this one, the Ben and Eubank coming up. What else are you looking forward to down the line this year? that kind of revs your engine a little bit?
Well, I mean, for me, one of our biggest stars is Jerome Boots Ennis, and April 12th, he fights Stanionis in Atlantic City at Boardwalk Hall, which is, I've been to a lot of shows at Boardwalk Hall that I've been involved with, but I've also seen that place lit up over the years with, Hollywood, Holyfield Foreman, Gatti, Ward. I was there for Froch against Andre Ward in the Super 6 fight. Like, so much history. And that's a great fight, April 12th. Obviously, same month we got Ben Eubank. And, you've got this crazy event at Times Square on May 2nd. And then you've got Canelo fighting in Saudi Arabia for the first time. You've got Taylor against Serrano, 3 locked in, in July. Like, it's non-stop. It really is. And we're seeing bigger fights and bigger nights than ever. And, looking forward to keep on promoting big shows all over the world.
Is Bivol what's more likely for him next? Is it a better BF third?
I think the trilogy. Yeah,
I
think the trilogy is what we should do. You've had 2 brilliant fights.
Yeah. And
whenever you get a chance for a 2 and a 3, it means that the first fights have been incredible. And I think that would be the right choice later in the year. But it's up to His Excellency, and we're ready to do whatever we need to. I think Bivol's a pound for pound great, and I think he's going to get better and better.
Agreed. All right. Well, listen, Mr. Hearn, I appreciate you making the time. Enjoy your time in Florida. Good luck with the show this weekend. And thanks very much for doing this.
Thanks, love. Cheers.
All right. Take care.